Hello, hello, hello. Hey, what's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome back to another discussion on ancient Egypt. Our presenter is Professor Bob Breyer, an established professor, credited professor, and a specialist in mummification, the art of mummifying the dead. So, with that, let's get straight into it.
Horemheb tore it down. Now, he does other things. He usurps all of Tutankhamun's monuments. Now, think about this. He was the king's deputy under Tutankhamun. That was his, really, heyday almost. Until he became pharaoh, of course. But it doesn't matter. Every monument that Tutankhamun had been advised to erect by probably, Horemheb takes Tutankhamun's name, carves it out, and puts his own. That's why it's so hard to find any information about Tutankhamun. Remember I said he's the mystery king? He's the most famous king in history, but we don't know anything about him? Because they were erasing all traces of him. He was associated with this heresy time, the Amarna heresy. His father was the heretic pharaoh. So Horemheb comes in and erases all traces of Tutankhamun. For example, Tutankhamun erected a stela, like all kings do, you know, the round-top stone, at Karnak Temple. It's called the Restoration Stela because of what it says. Now, obviously, he's been advised by the old advisor, what to say. And what it says is, when I became king, the temples were in disarray. There were weeds growing in them. All the statues of the gods had been melted down. The military was not respected. If it rode off, nobody attended. So he's really saying, Egypt had gone downhill under my father's reign, Akhenaten. So Tutankhamun has this stela erected. It's called the Restoration Stela because at the end he says, I will restore it all. I have had new statues of the gods made. Your temples are open again. Right? So I was wisely advising him, this is what the people want to hear. He erects this stela, but you do wonder, what does this kid think? I mean, he had grown up with his father at Amarna, and now somebody's saying, this is what we're going to say. Your father really did a bad job. You wonder what little Tutankhamun thought. But anyway, the stela is erected. Horemheb, as soon as he becomes king, you won't find Tutankhamun's name on that stela. If you look very carefully, look at the stela. The stela is in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. You go there, you can see it. It's off in a corner. Nobody ever looks at it. Nobody knows what it is. People walk by it. But if you look very carefully where the king's name is, the cartouche, it'll say Horemheb. But if you look very carefully, you'll see that it's carved deeper than all the other hieroglyphs. Horemheb came, carved out Tutankhamun's name, and then carved his name. Right? So Horemheb is erasing all traces of Tutankhamun. Right? All traces. Also, there's one other monument that's very important for Tutankhamun, but you're not going to find Tutankhamun's name there. It's called the Luxor Colonnade. Right? It's the Luxor Colonnade. When Tutankhamun's grandfather died, he left a monument unfinished. Right? He had started a hall with long columns. That's why it's called a colonnade. He had built it at Luxor Temple, but it's undecorated. And then Amenhotep III dies. When Akhenaten moves to Amarna, it's left undecorated. It's an unfinished monument. Unfinished. When Tutankhamun moves back from Amarna to Thebes, advises him, finish this monument. Why? You're going to be associating yourself with Grandpa, the establishment guy that everybody loved. So Tutankhamun's major monument during his 10 years of reign is restoring, completing the Luxor Colonnade. Now, how do you do it? How do you decorate it? What do you put on it? What he put on it were scenes of Opet. It's the most sacred festival in Egypt. He's a traditionalist. He's saying, look, I'm not really my dad's kid. I'm Grandpa's grandson. He decorates it with Opet. Now, Opet was a wonderful festival. major three gods of Thebes during this time were Amun, the hidden one, Mut, his wife, and Khonsu, their ram-headed son. The Trinity, always triads for all the gods. These gods had statues at Karnak Temple. Now, Karnak Temple is only about a mile and a half away from Luxor Temple. And once a year, during the festival...
All right. So, just now, he said, when they moved back to the capital city, I is coaching Tutankhamun on what to say, how to do, how to present himself, because he in his feelings, he didn't like where the king's father was taking the Egyptian people as far as religion. He didn't like that at all. To some degree, he was right. And I say that because you can't just ignore the military. You can't just ignore the needs of the people. But at the same time, you can't just strip the people of all their money and build up this super badass military and there's nothing for anybody else. So I manipulates, persuades, finesses this young man into basically destroying his father's legacy, only to turn around and have the next ruler of Egypt try to undo what he did to some degree. Not only is this other guy trying to get rid of traces of Tutankhamun, but he's trying to get rid of he's trying to erase Akhenaten. He's trying to erase all these people. And these people are deeply religious. Their whole society, especially the ruling class, the way they operate is based off of their belief system. So, Professor mentioned, the God, the God's wife, and the ram-headed son. Always a trinity, as he said. The reason why I bring this up, speaking specifically to the black community, to my Negroes, we have to remember when the slave catchers, when the slave catchers came to abduct the black people from Africa on behest of at the request of the ruling class, a lot of us were baptized into Christianity. We were baptized into Christianity, but by the time the transatlantic slave trade started, Christianity was already in full swing. Where did they get their ideas from? It's like, how can I explain this? It's like somebody stealing something from your grandmother, holding on to it, and then when the great-grandkids become adults, they sell it back to you. But you don't know that used to be your grandmother's possessions in the first place. It was stolen from her. So now they're selling back to you, and you're like, oh man, that's so pretty, that's so beautiful. But you think you buying it from somebody who actually created those fine linens, that fine jewelry, when the whole time that was your inheritance. But they're not telling you that. And that's how it is for black people all over the world, especially in America. Our people were robbed. The people that robbed us, they made millions, if not billions of dollars creating an industry based off of the information that they gathered from Africa. And then generations later, after they didn't set up trust funds for their kids and the kids' kids, now they slowly want to sell us these goods and services that they made. But it was based on knowledge that they stole from our ancient relatives. So in reality, we're buying back what was rightfully ours in the first place. Now, as far as the triad, where that ties into it is because even with religion, they turned it all around. And I still say to this day, I do believe in the teachings of Jesus Christ. But you cannot ignore the fact that the triad, the original religious triad, had nothing to do with Christianity. Christianity didn't come into its own until after Jesus was dead. It's like when scientists find a new disease for some strange reason, they always name it after the person that discovered it. Check your history books. It's true. I'm not lying. So I say that to say Jesus did have a message, but there are people who don't speak English. There are people who don't speak Hebrew. So in order to communicate that message, you have to speak it in a different language. Jesus was not the only messenger. He was not the only messenger. Hell, think about it. He had 12 disciples. 12. So clearly, even he understood that he can't be everywhere at the same time. Not in an earthly body. Not in an earthly body. But he was smart. Teach 12 people, get 12 disciples, teach them the message, and have them go out and spread the word. I mean, it is what it is. It's the truth. So, the triad, the God, the God's wife, and the Son. Now, for those of you who are interested, I will get further into the religious aspects of it, but not so much in this series. However, I can say that during this series, the professor will comment. He will refer to the Bible and the how the Bible and certain aspects of ancient Egypt coincide with each other. But a lot of religions started after Egypt fell. A lot of religions started because of what they borrowed from Egypt. But it's not just Egypt. Egypt is the most popular, but at the same time, like I said before, and I'll say it again, Egypt is a combination of different tribes coming together. So yeah, while Egypt is the most popular, Egypt didn't get that way by itself. Other tribes, other Negro communities within ancient Africa contributed to Egypt's greatness. That being said, the Holy Triad, it's not a Catholic concept. This was way before Catholicism even was thought about. Martin Luther, the German monk, he was dissatisfied with the way they was teaching religion. So a lot of variations of Christianity came about because the traditional Catholics weren't being honest with people about what was in the Bible. So it had to be changed. They knew they couldn't change it because, according to religion, you can't add to the Bible and you can't take away from the Bible. So that only left one thing: translation. It has to be translated in a language where people can understand it. Makes sense to me. Makes a lot of sense. So just remember, as you walk down this path with me, as you broaden your knowledge and your understanding, think about the world that we live in and associate that to the world that came before us. You have a grandmother, you have a great grandmother, and you have a great great grandmother. Even though you've never met these people, you came into being not because of your mother or your father, but those who came before. I'm not knocking your mother and your father, but what I'm saying is, if it hadn't been for those people, your mother and father wouldn't be here. And they wouldn't have got together to create you. So just because you don't see something doesn't mean it don't exist. And that's how the slave owners kept us down, suppressed us. You know, they knew we hadn't seen these ancient ancestors. They knew we hadn't heard of these ancient ancestors. But our grandparents and our great-grandparents, they heard the stories. They knew the truth. So they had to separate us. Every time it looked like we was getting ready to bond together and raise ourselves up as a community, they had to devise new ways of keeping us down. And they've done a good job. They've done such a good job that now discrimination is on autopilot. They don't even have to work as hard as they used to. We discriminate against ourselves, and it's a shame. It really is a shame. But getting back to our story, let's listen to what the professor has to say.
The statues of Amun Utin Khans, these sacred statues, would be placed in a little boat shrine and taken from Karnak to Luxor, where they would spend a fortnight or so. And Luxor was called the Southern Harem. And it would be a great festival. People could see the statues of the gods. There was drinking, there was eating, and the king paid for it all. It was a wonderful town feast. That's what Tutankhamun puts on Luxor Colonnade. That's the decoration that he has. So that he's really saying to everybody, I'm traditional. It's back to the good old times. So he does that, which is a nice thing. And you know, Tutankhamun took part in this festival. There are scenes of Tutankhamun making offerings to the gods. But if you look very carefully at Luxor Temple, I've been there a lot, you can't find Tutankhamun's name. It's all been erased. Where you have an image of Tutankhamun making offerings to the gods, cartouche is a little deeper, and there's Horemheb's name. Horemheb came right in, and just usurped the monument. So everything of Tutankhamun is going to be wiped away. That's why we hardly know about him, because he was part of this Amarna heresy. Now, what about Horemheb's own monuments? Well, Horemheb has two tombs. Now, he only has one body. Why does he have two tombs? Because first, when he was the king's deputy, when he was a commoner, he needed a tomb. So he built a tomb at Saqqara. Remember Saqqara, where the step pyramid was built? This was a place where people of the 18th dynasty, the nobility, people who are up and coming, not royalty, had tombs. There's a wonderful street almost of tombs. You could walk down and you could say, oh, so-and-so, the treasurer was here, the general was here, so-and-so was here. And Horemheb built a tomb for himself at Saqqara. Now, as a military commander, as the king's deputy, it's a pretty impressive tomb. Beautiful carvings. And you know what it shows? It shows Horemheb being rewarded for his good service by the pharaoh, who's probably Tutankhamun. And it shows him. He's being given gold collars, right? He's standing up, and he's got his arms up so the collar can be placed over his head, and people are coming and placing gold collars around Horemheb as his reward for good service. Now, remember, he's not going to be buried here, though, because he's going to become king. But he's going to have a tomb in the Valley of the Kings where he will be buried. But it's kind of interesting. I mean, vanity is sort of an interesting thing. The tomb at Saqqara is not going to be used as the burial place for Horemheb, because when he becomes king, he's going to want to be buried with all the big honchos in the Valley of the Kings. What he does, though, I mean, the tomb is almost complete. It's decorated, it's got scenes of military exploits, all kinds of things. When he becomes king, he sends sculptors to the Saqqara tomb to change it a little. Now, how are they going to change it, right? They're rewriting history. Horemheb the general is shown being rewarded with his collars of gold. And he tells the sculptors, wherever you see my picture, carve a little cobra on the forehead. Right? Now, the cobra is called by Egyptologists the uraeus. It's a technical term. It's simply Greek for cobra. It's a Greek for cobra. The Egyptians never used that word uraeus. It's a Greek word used later. It means cobra. The cobra was the sign of royalty, of the king. If you look, for example, at the famous gold mask of Tutankhamun, he's got a cobra coming out of the forehead. Coming out of the forehead. As a matter of fact, you know what's interesting? It almost became the symbol of Egypt. In sign language, international sign language for, say, deaf people, the word for Egypt, you put up your finger like a cobra to your forehead. That's the word for Egypt. So it became a sort of symbol of Egypt. So Horemheb says, well, I really am king. He sends the sculptors up, and they carve the little cobras all over the foreheads wherever Horemheb's image appears. Right? But, as I said, he's buried not at Saqqara, not good enough for the king. He's buried in the Valley of the Kings. His tomb was found in 1908. 1908 by Theodore Davis, that wealthy American who was excavating in the Valley of the Kings, who gave up thinking he had found Tutankhamun's tomb. He found Horemheb's tomb. And I'll tell you something interesting about it. There are a lot of similarities between his tomb, or at least the things found in his tomb, and Tutankhamun's. See, it's a return to tradition. 1908, Tutankhamun's tomb has not been found yet, right? 1922 is when his tomb was discovered. In 1908, they found, the tomb had been robbed. Horemheb's tomb had been robbed. Nice sarcophagus. Even some bones, perhaps Horemheb's bones, were found in the tomb. They weren't examined carefully. So Horemheb's mummy bones at least, may exist. But they also found wooden statues, broken, badly broken. But they had been gilded, and some had been painted black, and they were, from the fragments you could tell what they were. There was once a statue of the king standing on a panther, ready to harpoon. There were heads of panthers. These are kind of royal symbols of power, things like that. About, 1908 to 1922. In 1922, when Tutankhamun's tomb was found, statues just like that were found, but they were intact. So we could sort of reconstruct the statues that were in Horemheb's tomb from Tutankhamun's tomb.
Okay. So, the professor's talking about, he mentions that the cobra was a sign of royalty, Egyptian royalty. Okay. Can't dispute that. But in modern religion, according to the Bible, the snake is a symbol of evil. There's a contradiction. Because even though the snake is the serpent, as they call it, is a symbol of evil, the medical symbol is what I believe is still a staff with a snake spiraled around it. And some of the greatest physicians of the ancient world came from Egypt. So the royal physician was related to the snake, the cobra. I can't prove it, but that's my theory. And it falls in line with the rest of the story. But yeah, the Bible talks about the serpent and how he beguiled the Eve. But fast forward to modern medicine, the symbol for physicians and medicine is a staff with the snake wrapped around it. Interesting. So, if I'm religious, I'm supposed to not like the snake. But if I'm sick and I feel like I'm dying, I have to like the snake enough to be healed by those who follow under the symbol of the snake. Something's not right about that. I'm having a hard time understanding that myself. I know what I heard, I know what I've read, and it don't make sense. No, it don't make sense. I'm pretty sure it don't make sense to a lot of you all too. So, no. That's like somebody being in love with somebody else, but every time they out in public, it's like, oh, I can't stand you, I hate you. No, you don't. That's what you're saying, but you don't hate that person. You really like that person. You might not like some of their ways, but not enough to distance yourself from that person. Not enough to not want to be involved with that person. You're just talking out of your mouth. That's not what you really feel. That's not how you really think about that person. So why is it that some people feel like the Bible is a contradictory of itself? It says one thing in one passage and another thing in another passage. I don't know. All I can do is give you my viewpoint on it. I think with the Bible, it tells you what happened in one passage, and then in another passage, it explains how or why that situation came about. Is it out of order? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's being taken out of context. But we'll get into that much later. We'll examine that much later. But as far as ancient Egypt, I understand more now than I have in the past. So I hope that you will continue to tune in to hear the rest of this series as I present it to you. Once again, this is Ancient Egypt. Our host, myself, and our speaker is Professor Bob Breyer. And until next time, guys, I will chat with you all later.